Mr. Consistent back with yet another video. This is like my third take of this video. I already erased the entire whiteboard, so that's what the thumbnail was. But in this video, we're going to be talking about rejection. We're going to be talking about what is it, why it hurts so much, how to reduce the sting of rejection, why rejection is more important than being ignored, and why you much rather it, why you should start taking rejection personally, and lastly, how to actually reduce the amount of rejections you get. My name is Corey. As you may already know, I make these videos as a documentation of my sales experience and my sales journey, and I believe everybody should get in sales. So after watching these videos, you should be much better off. Now, I might actually do these videos more like in a podcast form, where I kind of just have notes and I just talk about the notes at length rather than pressuring myself to like make it like a true YouTube video. And honestly, it's a lot more efficient for like actually being consistent, because I can't keep redoing videos, right? But whole bunch of notes, whole lot to talk about, not much time because I do start work soon and your boy's been in a slump. But in this video, what actually inspired this video was because a common comment that I always get when I tell somebody that I work in sales is that they can never handle that much rejection. And I find it remarkable that people would move away from such an excellent skill set, such a lucrative career, because they're afraid of rejection. So in this video, somebody that is looking to getting into sales, once they start understanding what rejection is, what it entails, and how often it already happens to you, I believe a lot more people will probably get into the career. So that's another goal of this video. But yeah, we're gonna be going over those main 6 points. So for starters, I want to talk about what rejection actually is. So by Google's definition, it is the act of refusing to believe something, to accept, or use something. That's what rejection is by Google's definition. Now, I think a better definition in our terms, in terms of salespeople, would be rejection is really just the act of putting yourself in a position that you risk your comfort for achievement. Now, obviously, like, rejection is not really like a good feeling. Nobody likes to feel rejected. But in order to get that job that you currently have, to get the girl that you currently have, or even to get the house that you currently have or the apartment, it's like you have to put yourself in a position to get rejected. You have to put yourself in a position to be analyzed by another party, and they're going to determine whether you're worthy or not. Now, it sounds kind of harsh when you put it that way, but one thing you notice is that the most successful people in the world typically have gotten rejected the most. They've taken the most chances. They've put themselves in the most opportunities, because the law of average doesn't just apply to sales, it just applies to getting what you want out of life. So that's what rejection is. It's you put yourself in an uncomfortable position to advance. Now I want to talk about the good stuff, which is, why does rejection sting? Now, rejection doesn't sting because you were told no. Rejection stings because of the investment that you put in to the opportunity. It stings in proportion to it. For example, on the easy apply for Indeed, being told no for an application you did through the easy apply versus 3 weeks of round by round interviews. They're both a no, but obviously the interview part stings a lot more. If you got that denial letter because you just hit easily apply and you just put your pre-scripted resume, maybe you change it up a little bit, and you got that denial letter after 4 weeks of 3 in-person interviews that you had to get ready for, dress up nicely, rehearse, maybe even hired an interview coach. They're both rejections. At the end of the day, you didn't get what you wanted. But you don't care as much if you just press easily apply versus doing all that extra work. Another thing is, let's just say you went to the club and you just asked the girl, hey, do you want to come over tonight? She said no. Another scenario, you went to the club, you asked the girl, hey, I really like your vibe. And y'all started dancing. You got her phone number, spent like 2 hours with her at the club. You got her phone number. Y'all texted back and forth. You got her Instagram. You liked a couple of her stories, slid up on a couple of them. Took her out on a couple of dates. 6 months later, you asked her to come over and do the deed. She says no. How do you feel about, same girl by the way, how do you feel about that scenario versus the first one? In both scenarios, you didn't get what you wanted. But being told no after 6 months of all that effort, all that investment, all that time, all that mental bandwidth, it sucks. That's why rejection stings. It's not the actual rejection that stings. It's just the amount of effort that you put into that opportunity. Now, with that being said, it's like, how do you reduce the rejection sting? How do you not make it hurt as badly? Because it's not like just stop putting yourself in those positions. That's not the right way to do things. You want to keep on putting yourself in those positions, but the actual hurt of rejection is what's actually going to keep you back. There's just something that just goes on like in your nervous system when you invest so much into like the world and people and they just keep saying no, 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 no. It's very demotivating. It's not something that you can actually control either. Like you get to a point where you generally don't want to do anything anymore. So the next logical step is, how do you reduce that amount of hurt? And it's quite simple. It's that you need to just get to the point. So based off these last couple of videos, you know that I'm a very direct individual. I'm not somebody that likes to include a lot of fluff into really anything that I do. Maybe these videos is a lot of fluff, but this is me just ranting to a camera. I'm not the biggest proponent of building rapport in the traditional sense that it's taught to sales reps, where you have to comment on a flag that they have in their driveway or talk about their gardening or the shape of their house or the brand of their car, like their favorite sports team. Like I don't really agree with that, because I truly believe that people see right through that shit and it's very deceitful. At the end of the day, you gotta realize you are interrupting people, and you come into their doorstep talking about some shit that's not related to the sale at all. You're doing both of you guys a disservice by just wasting each other's time. So to get back to my main point is, when you get to the doorstep, I believe in just getting straight to the point by asking directed questions that bring you along the sale. When you get to a doorstep and you try to artificially talk about their lawn setup, and then you spend 15 minutes talking about their fucking gardening and how often they do the gardening, how their parents like gardening, and you spend all that time, and then you actually get to the sale and they're like, nah, we're good, or I'll think about it maybe next year or something, or can you come back? Think about all that time you spent with that person just to get that no. And how do you feel about it? You could have spent that 15 minutes knocking so many different doors, but you being told in that moment after you thought building rapport would have gotten you the sale in that traditional sense, it sucks. Now, this is not to say that building rapport in general is not a good thing. I believe in ways of building rapport that are more related to a sale. So, for example, let's say you sell solar panels and you have to talk about, you're talking about how many watts they use per month. I don't know, solar. And let's just say the customer talks about they do crypto mining that runs in their basement 24 hours a day or something like that. Now you talk about the crypto, you talk about like what coins they got or how long they've been doing crypto mining, you know, like something that you might actually be interested in. And when you ask these questions, it's actually related to what you're trying to sell. When you figure out how much energy they're using from their crypto mining GPUs, they're talking about their own thing, their own hobbies, their own passions, and is giving you information that brings the sale along. So like I said, this is not to say that rapport building is not good or real, but just keep it related to the sale. Because once you start talking about shit that's not related to the sale at all, like their fucking car brand or their flag on their license plate or something like that, you risk all that investment into something that you don't even know if it's gonna actually succeed. And this is not to say that like when you get the sale by not talking about it, at least you would have gotten the sale in a lot less time. Now, that's how you reduce rejection sting, is that you just get straight to the point. Stop that artificial rapport building by talking about shit that's not related. And when you kind of extrapolate it to real life in general, stop doing things that aren't related to what you want to do. So like if you're at the club and you know what your intentions are, like you're trying to bring a woman home that night, like make that the conversations. Because there are plenty in that club that are there for that same intention. Now you going there wasting each other's time trying to small talk about stuff that's not related, you ultimately do the disservice. And this also acts as like a filter towards the people that you really want to talk to as well. Another thing is like stop following up more than one time. Like if you sell low ticket, you don't have to go back to their house more than once. They got the information the first time. The second time is a follow-up. They should be buying on that moment. You don't have to go back, okay, just come back this time or this time or this time or this time, and then just chasing them around. If you feel like yourself that you have to spend all that time and all that investment into a maybe, then you just aren't asking the most direct questions. You're not really getting to the point. So another thing I want to talk about with this whole like artificial rapport building is they talk about how talking about things that genuinely interest you, and I'd say that's also bullshit. Don't talk about things that genuinely interest you in the beginning of the sale. In my experience, it just does not work. It's best to just leave it towards the ending. Like after you've gotten a decision, then talk about the things that genuinely interest you about their household. Because I've talked about this in one of my other videos about looping. But when you leave the things that genuinely interest you to the end, it does a couple of things. Is that one, prospects are used to people coming to their doorstep and then being like artificially rapport built upon. So they're used to somebody coming to their door, they're talking about some flags, they're talking about their gardening or something like that. So when you come in and you talk about their Tesla that you actually like, they're just registering that as, oh, this guy's just trying to like get me on my good side so he can sell me some shit. And then another thing is when you leave it towards the end, you avoid that part. But once you get a decision, it almost seems a lot more genuine to the other person as well. Because let's say you got through the entire presentation, they told you no, and you don't really feel too bad about it. Now you talk about their Tesla in their driveway. Like, hey, I know you weren't interested, but I was looking at the Model Y like 2025 Performance. Is that the one that you have? Yeah, it is. Bro, how does it ride? I heard it was like really stiff on the wheels. And then once you start doing that, it comes across a lot more genuine to them, and you actually still stay within the sale. In one of my other videos, I talked about looping, but it's like kind of like an art where you talk about that, and then you try to figure out how to get back into the sale. And I'm telling you, 99% of the time, it works. They told you no. You talk about something that you are actually interested in. They know that you're actually interested in, and now y'all generally having that back and forth. And now it got to the point where you figured out how to get back into the sale. They're just way less likely to actually tell you no again. So that's how you reduce the sting of rejection. And I'm telling you. But yeah, so I'm gonna go to my fourth point, or my third point, which is rejection is actually way more important than being ignored. Now, in other words, is that you really want to force a decision out of people. When you force a decision out of people, it leaves an impression. When somebody tells you yes or no, they have to think about the decision afterwards. So if they buy your product, they obviously have your product. Now they're going to be thinking about the product. If they tell you no, there's still an element of FOMO that goes on in people's heads. Like, should I have said no? Or if they might see you again and think about whether that no was a good idea or not. When you leave an impression on people, it just makes it way more likely that you could actually just come back and probably sell them again, or come back, talk to them, give them a different pitch, might do it again. People say no like really out of fear of anything. They're not really concerned about your product. They just say no because they don't really want to commit to it. Now, that's not to say that your product isn't good. They're going to be thinking like, oh, should I have done that opportunity? Should I have done this? Should I have spoken to him a little bit longer? But my point is that when you don't force a decision out of people and you just allow the stall, because people will stall if they are given the chance to, you leave their heads immediately. Like if you present to somebody, you give the entire presentation, and then they hit you with the, oh, I'll think about it. And you just accept that. They're not going to think about it. They're just going to be thinking like, oh, I still have the freedom to this sales rep when I do make up my mind. And with that freedom comes absolutely no decision and nothing happening. So if you try and go back to them after you accepted that I got to think about it, boom, I got to think about it again. It happened. It worked the first time. I'm just going to do it again. So this is a big reason why, like, I'm not the biggest fan of, like, just digital texting, calling, because it's a lot easier to ignore somebody digitally. It's like, yes, it's a lot more scalable. You can reach a lot more people that way. But I at least know that in person, I have complete control over the interaction. I understand that humans or people struggle to say yes or no. They struggle to make decisions. Now, when I have them right in front of me, I'm able to make them make a decision, assuming that, you know, I know what I'm doing and I'm like a skilled sales rep. But when you move things over to the digital format, or if you're calling somebody, it's too easy just to hang up. Or you're texting, it's too easy just to leave it on red or leave it to another time. It's a big reason why companies still hire door-to-door sales reps, is because that in-person connection is so much more effective than the digital realm. Like, I don't text, I don't like using social media, I don't like influencing, I'm doing it right now, but I don't really like to influence one-on-one through the digital realm because it's just a lot easier for people to stall, and that's the problem. So, just to wrap it up to my main point, I don't have much time, but you want rejection, you want to force the decisions out of people. As much as it does suck, being ignored sucks a lot more, because when they suck, they actually, when they ignore you, they're actually just rejecting your presence. Not even like what you're saying, your offering, or anything about you. And this brings me to my next point. I should probably actually read these notes. I'm just talking. But this brings me to my fourth point, which is why you should start taking rejection personally. Now, when you first got hired to your company, they probably said, hey, just don't take rejection personally. It's not really about you, right? They could have been having a bad day, or they don't like the product, or whatever it was. It has nothing to do with you. And it's true to a very small extent. And here's why. So, if Trump came to that person's doorstep and said, give me your credit card information, do you think that person's going to say no? Trump is there, Secret Service, men in black suits, all in front. Give me your credit card information. Yes, sir. Or if their favorite R&B artist came to their doorstep and was like, hey, buy this. Yes, sir. Now, you coming to their doorstep, can you say that? Most likely not. And this is why I should say that it really is about who you are at the end of the day, right? Now, if their neighbor came by and said, you came there with your neighbor, and he was like, hey, you should go and buy this product, and they really trusted that neighbor, like family to them, they're going to buy the product. So in what sense does it make to not take rejection personally? Now, they could be rejecting the idea of you. You have a neon vest, a tablet. They're rejecting the door-to-door salesperson. But you still had control breaking into a different category. You could have said something differently. You could have had different body language. You could have maybe came up with a different approach. You have a lot more control in your sales than you actually think. So the idea of not taking rejection personally, if it helps you knock more doors, use it temporarily. But by not taking rejection personally, it's like you're not really taking responsibility of why people told you no. Once you start taking it personally, you'll start to analyze every single interaction. Like, this person told me no. What did I say in this conversation? How was I standing? Did I smile? Did I wave? Did I stand on the right side of the porch? Did I talk too much? Did I talk too much about the features? Did I not ask him the right question? Was my grooming not good? Do I smell? When you stop taking rejection personally, you start realizing, okay, how can I personally be better for the next interaction so I can start replicating it? So, leading into my next point, once you start taking it personally, I'm going to end off the video with how you actually reduce the amount of rejections you get. So obviously, it's not like you're never going to get rejected again, but you can get to a point where you probably just won't be told no. And I like to use like people with a whole lot of influence, like world leaders, celebrities. I like to use them as good examples because they're so high up in the influence chart that those people in their positions are getting rejected way less than people in lower positions. So there's not going to be a video about, or I guess this point is not going to be about how to get better. It's to truly just keep on putting yourself in positions to get rejected, because it creates a cycle where putting the law of average at the top, you increase your law of average, or you increase the amount of times that you get told yes in ratio to no when you keep on putting yourself in a position to get rejected. Because when you get rejected, you're in that position, you learn from it. You learn the experience. You learn more about human nature. You learn why they said no. You learn from it. You don't do it again, or you do something good again. Boom, your law of average goes up. And then you go into another position. Okay, this interaction, taught me what to do in the next interaction. Let me try that interaction. It works. Reinforces the cycle. Your law of average goes up. And then this is how you go from a level of no influence to a high level of influence, is that you just keep on putting yourself in those positions. And I mean, you could really just talk about, this applies to anything in life. So the more doors you knock, the more opportunities you have to get a sale, and the more learning experiences you have in future prospects to get the sale. And then it just keeps on cycling and cycling and cycling. The more referrals, the more you learn how to talk, the more you learn about body language, the more it's like, it just keeps on cycling and cycling and cycling. So the ultimate way to reduce rejection is honestly just to get rejected a lot more. So 25 minutes, not bad. This video's like kind of off a little bit because your boy's in a sales slump. So, you know, the energy is not at the pinnacle. But yeah, I hope you learned something from this video. Go out there and get rejected. And I think I actually did have a last point. Oh, this is my last point before I go out. How much you feel rejection and how much it affects you is in direct proportion to your self-esteem. If you keep telling yourself you love yourself, you love yourself, you love yourself, and you genuinely believe it, it doesn't matter what happens on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't matter what somebody tells you, if they tell you to fuck off their doorstep, or they ignore it. It doesn't matter like what happens on the outside world, because you know that your internal self-esteem is strong enough to overcome it. So maybe that should be the lesson of the video, is increase your self-esteem. That's gonna do you wonders. All right, go kill it.